Okay, so let's call this to order and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so we can start off with a roll call. Maybe everyone could tell us who they are as we're going through this, so we all know each other. Start down there with Mike.
Mike Jessen, representing the County Council. Aaron Case, the Superintendent at East Porter County Schools.
Patty Keating, Community Development Educator with Purdue Extension.
Laura Blaney, Porter County Commissioner.
Sue Summers, Staff Person.
Bob Thompson, Director of Planning and Development for the county.
Jeremy Rivas, Porter County Council.
Jesse Buzz, Director of the Porter County Public Library System.
Troy Heyman is with Indiana Farm Bureau, but he's out of town today. It's just, we appreciate all you guys being here. We just couldn't get everyone here.
Yeah.
But he's asked that you'll get copies of the presentations, and he wants to be active in this committee.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I don't want to waste anybody's time, so do we want to get started with the presentation on broadband by Dr. Gallardo?
Good morning. Let me see if I learn how to do this.
Oh, good.
There. So I'm gonna. Can you hear me?
There we go.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Fantastic.
Sorry. I'm gonna be kind of this awkward, or I can move over here. It's fine. So I'm also a Purdue Extension specialist. I'm a colleague of Patty, and I just wanted to. I was asked to just give a quick overview of broadband. As you all know, it's a hot topic right now, and it's always important to understand, agree on the problem from a public policy perspective. I need also to clarify that I've been recently asked by Okra to help them manage their broadband plans, but today I'm talking to you as a Purdue Extension, and with my Purdue Extension hat, not the Okra. So let me just get started by, I always start by asking what is broadband? And I always get different definitions. So the feds define it as internet access that is always on and faster than dial-up, right? We know what that means, those of us that are older, the dial-up situation. The key thing is that different technologies offer different speeds. Right now they're defining it as download as 25 megs down and upload of 3 megs, or 25.3. So that's currently the definition. However, the infrastructure bill that is currently somewhere in Congress floating around has identified 120 as potentially eligible for broadband. So that's where you get a little bit into a tricky situation if it's 25.3, if it's 120. We are technology agnostic, but that's the way the feds define it, 25.3 currently. I don't know if that's going to change, have no idea. But the infrastructure bill and other funding mechanisms are looking at 100 over 20. So there are different technologies that involve broadband. DSL, which is your old kind of telephone line. Cable modem, which is kind of a hybrid of fiber coaxial, where you bring fiber to the premise and then you push to the house with coax cable and your cable channels and so forth. You then have fiber optic to the home. You also have fixed wireless. That is not mobile broadband. Many people get confused. Fixed wireless is what it means. The end receiver is fixed, meaning the home. You have to have line of sight. And then you have satellite and the LEO that are kind of everybody's talking about now, with Elon Musk and others putting a bunch of satellites out there for rural areas. So there's the difference between fixed and versus mobile broadband. Many times when people talk about broadband, they're referring to fixed broadband, when not your mobile, your phone type of broadband, okay? There are multiple ways to deploy broadband. One of them is the private sector. WISPs, wireless internet service providers, telephone cable, they do everything. They build the network, they do what's called kind of the wholesale and the retail, they do everything. Then you have public-private partnerships where there's some sort of combination between the state or the feds and internet service providers. Then you've got municipal broadband networks, and then you have co-ops or REMCs like they're known here in Indiana. We will need a combination of all of these if we're truly going to bridge the digital divide. It is expensive to build out there in areas that do not have the density. So it's important to keep in mind that there are multiple ways. These are just clear-cut for discussion purposes, but in real life, it's a blend, really. It's a gray area between these types of models. Amon, Idaho, for example, is one where the city built a ring of fiber and then found an ingenious way to offer property tax credits for the property owners to then absorb the cost of getting that last drop from the curb to their home. And then they open it up to 5 or 6 providers offering broadband. That's, for example, an example of a PPP, a public-private partnership. There's a lot of examples. I don't want to bore you this morning, this early with that. But just so you know, there's different technologies, different speeds, and different ways to deploy the technology. Here is the latest FCC map of Indiana. We call it an inverse footprint. Everything in gray is covered by advertised 25.3. Anything in orange is not. The darker the orange, the more housing units per census blocks. Now, we know that the FCC data is not the best, okay? Don't shoot the messenger, but that's all we have, shy of asking providers for their data. So this gives you a kind of an idea. Porter County, you can see it's mostly covered, or at least with advertised 25.3. But what happens when we change to 120? It changes drastically. So that's why it's a sticky situation. How are you going to define broadband? That's way beyond my paycheck. So, but this is what the data is saying. Now you notice Porter County changes. You have that southeast or southern half of Porter County that would not be served or underserved in a way. Notice also the population increases and everything. FCC data is known to overestimate. I didn't do anything. Overestimate coverage. I don't know.
The mouse goes to sleep if you don't move it.
Oh. Well, I can't move it from here. So. Okay. So you can see then the difference. So as you guys start debating about broadband, just be mindful that I think we push this button now. And if you can
There we go.
move it there. So then, as you discuss broadband, obviously you need providers on board. You need to define what it is you want to build. When I was asked to testify at the Ohio Senate a couple of years ago, they were launching a broadband program. They asked me to come talk about what the research and so forth. The only thing I mentioned to them is try and build networks that are forward-looking, not backward-looking. And the reason for that is because today, for example, if you were only to browse the internet, no Netflix, just browse the internet on dial-up, you would go crazy. So the web adapts accordingly to whatever uses are coming. Now, it's roughly 10% of homes in the U.S. subscribe to 1 gig, which is symmetrical, 1 up and 1 down. That, some folks are saying, is going to open a market to develop applications that rely on 1 gig connectivity. How long it's going to take, I have no idea. But that's kind of the situation that, what are you going to build and will it last? It's the main question. Here, we have some data. Here in Porter County is the gray bar to your right, and then Indiana overall is the dark bar, the black bar. We developed, through Purdue Extension, we developed a digital divide profile. You can see Porter County's below the state in all of the metrics, so that means you're kind of okay. The lower the score, the better, so you're okay there. But notice on the 6.6 down here, on the internet income ratio, the higher the number, that means that there is a higher share of low-income households without internet compared to wealthier homes. So this means that the share of low-income households with no internet is 6 times higher than the wealthier homes. So there's an inequality issue that's going on. You can see over here as well, the first two variables that we use to kind of set the stage. Sorry, it's hard to present with the mask. It's called digital distress. Many times homes may be in digital distress because they rely on mobile phones only with limited data plans or no devices at all. Or other times they only rely on cellular data. Those of you that have teenagers understand why that's an issue. They blow through the data plan in the first day or two of the plan, right? So those two indicators are related or correlated with what we call digital distress. Porter County is below the state, but there is still 1/5 of homes in your county that rely only with mobile device or no devices at all. And also close to 1/5 of counties that rely only on cellular data or have no internet access. Then we have income. If you go from left to right, it's poorer and wealthier. It's the share of homes that do not have home internet. And you can see there are some discrepancy, big differences between the poor homes and the wealthier homes. For example, in Porter County, 5.5% of homes making $75,000 or more do not have internet at home versus 41% that make less than $10,000. There's another metric that's starting to surface, speed tests. Now speed tests are not the best metric. They're not perfect. Like the FCC data is not perfect, speed tests are not perfect either. There's a lot of factors that can affect the speed test. But this one gives you a very rough idea of what's going on. So here, out of roughly 50,000 speed tests conducted in Porter County in 2018, 2019, 2020, you've got a median download speed that is increasing. We don't use averages because they're highly skewed by outliers. As you know, if you were being asked about your income in your neighborhood and you happen to live in the same neighborhood as Bill Gates, you can imagine what happens to the average income. That's why we don't use averages. Does anybody live close to Bill Gates?
Yeah, he wants me to move.
I'm ruining the neighborhood.
So here you can see that the median download and upload speed have been going up over time, 2018, 2019, 2020. That's good. That means the overall network is improving, and especially because the number of speed tests are significant, right? They're more than 50,000. But look at the maximum and the minimum speeds recorded on those speed tests. As of 2020, during the pandemic, there was a home that was connecting at 935 megs down and 677 up. But then there was also a home that was connecting at 0.001 and 0.001. So it's more about an issue of how can we make sure that most of folks, if not all folks of Porter County can have access to adequate connectivity. That's the main question I think your task force needs to answer. I'm not going to get into the funding options because I know Stu has a presentation about that. Now that I'm with Okra, I've learned a lot, drinking from like 4 fire hoses. But there's a lot of money coming in. Connected Nation, which is a nonprofit nationwide, has estimated at $350 billion for broadband coming down the pipe. Now or in the near future, $350 billion. Deloitte, the consulting firm, said that it would take roughly $150 billion to build adequate connectivity throughout the country. So in theory, we should be able to address the infrastructure issue in the next 5-10 years, in theory. So I'm not going to get into all the ones that are going on. I know Stu has some information on that, but just wanted to share with you that there's a lot of money. If you're in the broadband world, it's a good time to be around. What are the barriers I see? Lack of leadership. In your case, you don't have that because you're here today. You're putting together a group that will work on this. Many times communities complain, but they don't do anything about it. They don't have anybody that picks up the banner and runs with it. You guys have, so that's good. Lack of expertise. especially smaller communities, they cannot write a grant for anything, for states or federal, so they are overwhelmed. So lack of expertise is another big issue that we've raised with the state and with the feds constantly. You have got to build capacity to help them be able to write those grants. And then obviously lack of density on the side of providers. The ROI is simply not there. So what can you do to help providers meet that ROI? As Scott, the broadband director for the state, mentions, and I steal his quote every time, is treat broadband providers like you would any other industrial prospect. Why don't you treat them like that? Because it is an investment that's worthwhile for the quality of life of your community. Right-of-ways, obviously, the easier you can make it, the better. Easements, topography, railroads are very expensive to go under or above. So if there's anything that you have a railroad there, think about it. So easements and right-of-ways, anything as county government that you can do to make it easy on them to lower that, to make sure that ROI is there. Okay? As Purdue Extension and Purdue Center for Regional Development, we can help. We are not in the business of building broadband, but we are in the business of educating and increasing awareness, and I have not ventured out of the infrastructure argument. There is also devices to consider and digital skills. All that sprinkles to community and economic development, workforce development, whatever it is. We've been doing some wage and benefit analyses for regions throughout the state. One of the questions they ask employers is, how do you train people? On-site, online, community colleges, 50 to 60% are responding online. So if you don't have adequate devices, skills, and home connectivity, you're not going to be able to train those workers. So it has workforce development implications. So this is what we have. It's not intended to be comprehensive, but just to let you know that we have these digital inclusion tools in the toolbox to help you all. And it's also, you know, Patty and myself can help in any way. So, whew. There we go, 10 minutes, right?
Perfect. You follow instructions well. But you are a member of the committee too, so we have a seat for you next to Mr. Jessen. And he's on Eastern time, but he still had to drive up a couple hours to be here, so we thank you, Doctor, for your time this morning.
That's our life in extension.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So next we have Gene Cruzy. Did I say that correctly?
Yep.
Comments?
Gene, tell you what, let me give you this wireless microphone. Give it a second to warm up.
All right, let's see if there we go. Cool. Well, good morning. I'm also on Eastern time, so it's later for me, so this is good. So my name is Gene. I'm the CEO of a broadband company based in Elkhart and LaPorte called Surf Broadband. I'm also a Purdue grad in electrical engineering. And I've worked in broadband my whole career. So my very first job was bringing a 56K internet connection to Goshen College in 1990. And that internet connection was shared by the entire campus. So when you think about how far technology has come. So if you don't know, Surf Broadband, we have about 135 team members today. Our main offices in Indiana are in Elkhart and in LaPorte. We think we're one of the oldest and largest ISPs in Indiana. I know way back in the day, us and NITCO were swapping stories in the early 2000s, late 90s, so I know they've been around as long as we have, and in the telephone world a lot longer. We have about 11,000 fixed wireless customers across Indiana, across 625 fixed wireless towers. Today we have about 20,000 fiber to the home passings, and our goal is to be at 48,000 by the end of this year, so in 3 months, and then be at around 100,000 homes passed by the end of next year. So how are we doing that? We made a decision to take in some private investment dollars. We partnered with Bain Capital Credit They've given us $300 million to build fiber across our territory. And so I have some stats of what we've done so far. So far this year, we spent $64 million building fiber in Elkhart County, $32 million building fiber in LaPorte County, $6 million building fiber in Marshall County, about $2 million in Porter County, about $3 million in Lake County, and we're in 3 states, so we're doing the same level of construction in all 3 states, Indiana, Michigan, and in Illinois. And when Stu invited me to this, I was super excited because, frankly, Porter County is our next big build. We have about $80 million budgeted for Porter County for the next year and a half to 2 years. And someone over here is on the Planning Commission. You've probably seen some of our stuff. We're building out Couts currently, the entire town and quite a bit of the rural corridor around Couts, where we've heard complaints from the residents. And frankly, COVID reshifted all of our priorities, but us in the broadband world especially. Like, I heard stories of superintendents from schools. I think I saw someone over here from a school where they were using MiFi hotspots in school buses and parking them in trailer parks so the kids could get internet. And our company, our vision and mission is that broadband is like an equalizer. So where I live in Elkhart, believe it or not, Elkhart's a pretty big city. Where I live, I can't get broadband, so I have a wireless antenna on I even live in the city limits, and I have an antenna on my roof that shoots down the road to my office so that I could get broadband at my house. So, and I live in a decent house. I live on the river. It's a fairly nice neighborhood. So, I see the need. But anyways, we believe that broadband's an equalizer, that people that live in the ruralest parts of Indiana or the most dense urban areas all have access to the same resources. And for me, it just came totally to circle when my dad's wife died during COVID, and my dad has a lung condition where, if he gets COVID, he's like toast. And because he has our internet service at his house, and he lives in the country on a wireless internet service, he was able to do telemedicine visits and all that kind of stuff. And literally, I think he's alive today because he was able to stay out of the public during the early parts of the pandemic. And so, not getting all the politics of COVID, but it really is, broadband is giving my dad access to things that other people couldn't have, or he'd have to put his life in jeopardy. There's all kinds of stuff I can tell you about SURF, but we're pretty excited about Porter County. I think one of the coolest things that I'll bring up is that we use the ValpoNet fiber, working with Stu, to connect the schools in this area, and now we plan to leverage that investment. That's where some of that $2 million investment in Porter County was, connecting the schools that weren't on ValpoNet. And now the next step of that is to take it out into the community. And we work closely with my friends here at NITCO. We're doing a joint project right now to connect some of Smith Ready Mix's locations. So while we are competitors, we're, I don't know what you would say, like friendly competitors. Like, yeah. So, I could keep going, but I'll stop talking and see if you have any questions for me.
Well, thank you. Perhaps we should go to Tom now.
Yeah, we can hit the discussion further down the line. Thank you very much. Tom?
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting us today. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Eric Galbraith, is our Vice President for Business Development. Eric actually ran TV Cable of Rensselaer for a really long time, 25 years maybe. Yeah, I know. I'm Tom Carroll. I'm the Senior Vice President for Sales and Marketing for NITCO, an 80-year-old telephone and internet and cable company. We're headquartered in Hebron, but we serve a 5-county area of northwest Indiana that includes Lake and Porter, Newton, Jasper, and LaPorte County. We're not everywhere. We are in many locations, however. We have about 10,000 customers. We have about 15,000 homes passed. Our growth has been, in the last couple of years, adding more and more fiber, primarily residential, and that's been in the southern part of the county, Hebron, and also a lot in Jasper County. So that's been our focus. We have also partnered with a lot of municipalities here in northwest Indiana. we partnered with the town of Chesterton as they built their own fiber network with TIF dollars to build out and serve primarily the business community, but it's also available for the residential community. We are a service provider and also a user of the city of Valparaiso's ValpoNet. Just like Gene and Surf Broadband uses it, so do we. We service businesses and portions of the community utilizing that network, and we're pleased to do that. We are also a partner and an operator of the City of East Chicago's municipal network, and that is about a $2 million investment that the city made, and we have a long-term contract with the City of East Chicago to continuously build that out, serve the business and residential community there. So you really do need partners, whether it's an investment of cash like Surf Broadband's doing with large partners, or municipal partners that have cash that they can put into it. That's how you grow these networks. We can't all do it alone because we can't all be everywhere. Porter County specifically is cut up into various sections that are served by what were called local exchange carriers. Frontier, who's not here today, has plant in about 70% of the homes in the county. They service it with primarily DSL. NITCO has about 20% of Porter County with both DSL and also with fiber. And then AT&T has a small portion of Porter County up in the northeast section of the county, so they serve about 5% of the homes in the county. They're the local exchange carriers that were the original telephone companies for Porter County. Then you have companies like Comcast, which comes in. They probably serve 80% of the county in terms of potential service. And then you have also Surf Broadband, which is coming in and investing heavily in the county and in many other areas. So those are really the major providers. You also have several WISPs, wireless companies. Midwest Telecom is one, and NITCO actually has some fixed wireless customers as well in Porter County. So there's a variety of service providers that are all looking at what the potential investment must be. And Dr. Gallardo was right. Density means everything. That's where we're going to go to get our best return on the investment, is through dense areas where you have populations that are underserved. And I think that the state of Indiana recognized that, and when they authorized an additional $250 million to be spent over 2 years, they were hoping that the state and would partner with service providers to provide services in areas that were really, really underserved, and getting those dollars to the census blocks and specific addresses to be able to serve that. I can tell you right now, there is not one address in Porter County that qualifies for any state money right now. Not one. And it's just the way it's been set up. Now, there are programs that the state has available where individual consumers can apply through a portal that's available through the state to actually have some subsidy dollars provided to a service provider to bring a drop to their home. And that's a maximum of $25,000 per address. The information that we got last week after the portal opened, about 3 weeks ago, is that only 2 persons statewide had applied for any subsidy money. I don't think that's probably the answer here in getting people to try to find to get subsidy money to build a drop to their home. And the criteria for getting state dollars to service providers to provide services to true underserved areas, the criteria is not there yet either. They're going to have to lower that criteria dramatically. Now, NITCO has applied for monies through the OKRA program, but none of it in Porter County. I mean, Jasper and Newton County, we have areas that qualify. And so we're going to probably use $2.5 to $3 million of our own money and match it with the state money and be able to do about a $6 or $7 million build. But it's not going to happen here in Porter County, at least this year, unless they change the criteria. So NITCO is probably adding 250, 300 homes a year with fiber. and a lot of that is transitioning our existing customer base from DSL or fixed wireless to a fiber home. So we're trying to make sure that our existing customer base has the best service that we can provide them. Are we looking at other areas, greenfields? Absolutely. Always looking at those opportunities. So I think partnering with municipalities, looking at potential state grants is good, but it's not the end-all, be-all. I would encourage you to continue looking at, opportunities to open the floodgates for other ISPs to come in and encourage them to come in and work in the community. So it's unfortunate we couldn't have all the providers that service the county here today, but we appreciate being invited and being partners with you to help figure this out going forward. So I don't know if you have any questions for me or not. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tom. Do you want to go into your presentation, Stu, and then we can discuss all of this information?
If you think of one of Dr. Gallardo's slides showing Porter County as not qualifying, that's because, as I understand it, please correct me if I'm wrong, Professor, if only one house in a census tract has a certain level of internet access, then the FCC says the entire census tract is served. Is that correct?
Yeah, census blocks, yes.
Blocks.
And that's correct. The criteria, as you pointed out, sir, it is written in Indiana code. We don't have a lot of wiggle room. This is my Oprah hat speaking. But there is a challenge process. The legislation did include actual 25-3 rather than advertised. It's a big difference. So there's going to be a challenge process that is open now, and it's due, I think, November 3rd, and I don't know my timeline yet. I'm sorry. The 4th. Yeah. So that's correct. That's why the FCC, many folks are not happy that they're not eligible because the FCC says they're covered by and that's maximum advertised speeds actually that are shown there. So yes.
And when Troy called me and told me he couldn't come to today's meeting, he ran a speed test on his own property, and he was less than 110. So some fraction of 1 download and some portion of 10 on upload. Do I do that right? 110. Vice versa. Yeah. Thank you. So there certainly are pockets of areas in Porter County that need to be served. Granted, a lot of the data that goes over your lines are video. People are doing Netflix or watching reruns or whatever, but the research indicates, and I think Patty's colleagues will support this, that farmers today need fast internet access to determine the nitrogen in their soil and whether or not to irrigate, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture says that half of American farms could benefit from high-speed internet access because of the high technologies that farmers are using these days. I talked to Okra, and Doug ran this Times article September 28th about the state grant program to upgrade internet. I think one of the recommendations that this committee should consider is urging our citizens to get online and apply for their address to get service. I know of a person in South Porter County who was told, well, if you and 7 of your neighbors each kick in $1,000, we may be able to bring internet to your neighborhood.
The numbers are not quite right, but yeah.
Yeah, $750. And you can't get all your neighbors to agree to shell out $700 or whatever the number is. But under this program, if the entire neighborhood were to sign up, and as Tom said, only a couple of people in the entire state had signed up by 10 days ago.
As of yesterday, that we have had 2,000 now.
2,000. Good.
Wow,
So, it's growing, and we're anticipating a massive influx. And there's also a call center in case you don't have internet.
That makes sense.
Call and register your address.
But the best way to bring state money to Porter County right now would be for residents of Porter County to sign up for the service. Is that correct?
I would agree with that, yes.
So one of the logical things that comes to mind is Jesse and your marketing of the library system and Dr. Case and school systems is to tell our patrons, our customers, our stakeholders, get onto this website and apply for this state money to come in.
The
Jean?
best way to reach them, the first thing I think of is tell Kurt to put it online.
Yeah.
And that's maybe not the best way to reach these people.
Exactly. We're going through the school system or the library system.
Yeah.
Notes and backpacks going home.
We still do that periodically. But, and I will tell you, when you're talking about those speeds, because if you look at the graph or the chart, it's mostly South County.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, when we had virtual learning, I had people coming to my house, like my in-laws and everybody coming to my house to do their homework and to upload their lessons and different things because they don't. Frontier down there is a challenge. We've got people that the advertised speed is 5.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't happen. It just sits and spins. So I was glad to hear that you've got some work. I know Tom and I have talked for a while about some work trying to get fiber and different things into those areas, but you get into the rural areas, Morgan Township, Pleasant Township, it's hard.
So the one incentive on the agenda here is the Okra Connectivity Program. And there's a couple other incentives that I'll go through, and Dr. Gallardo, if you would please help me on that. The second is what's called a Broadband Ready Ordinance. A Broadband Ready Ordinance essentially follows a state statute that sets a single point of contact for internet service providers to call when they want to use right-of-way to extend their lines. Bob and Scott have reviewed this ordinance. There's really not a lot of discretion in what you put into it. But one option the committee could consider and ask these providers just how valuable would it be to make Porter County a broadband-ready county. And right now we're not certified as broadband-ready. One of the whispers that I've heard from the state is as they loosen up the money that's coming down the line, they might very well give priority to counties and municipalities that have already certified themselves as broadband-ready. So the second item we might want to consider is making Porter County, recommending to our commissioners that Porter County become broadband-ready certified. And I don't know how valuable that is to providers. I do know from a marketing perspective it looks well on Okra's map.
Correct. Yes. The broadband ready is really to make it easy on them, a single point of contact, quick response time, to get whatever is needed on their end, and that's what broadband ready certification is. I don't know about the losing the money or anything. Like I said, I just started in this new role last week. But obviously, if you do have a broadband ready certification, you do signal that you're serious about the issue.
And I should add that the county's taken some steps already to fulfill the requirements to be broadband ready. The commissioners passed a couple resolutions yesterday, or the Plan Commission.
Drainage Board passed
Drainage
a few
Board.
resolutions that
Too many meetings yesterday.
allowed for administrative reviews of plans. Instead of, normal procedure was is staff would review it and then have to kick it to the board for the approval, which could take,
Takes time.
30 to 45 days easily.
And now it's a matter of...
Now it's 10 days.
10 days.
So we'll have to have special meetings, but we're ready for that now. Those are passed.
Can I make a comment about that? So, the broadband business is a race. Like, everybody's trying to get fiber in the ground. And if the county's really serious about broadband, and I think I don't know what the steps are on your side, but from a real world example, we committed to a $20 million build in a city in Indiana. We had the mayor out, we had a groundbreaking in April, and because of political red tape in the municipality, we haven't installed one single foot of fiber. In that same time, other cities that came to us and said, come here and we will make it easier on permitting and we'll work with you. We're not going to do any special favors, but we're going to streamline the process. we built out the entire town of Wanata, the entire town of Bourbon, Bremen. We're starting on Culver. Those all jumped to the top of the list because they said, we're ready and we'll make it easy. So you can get the certification. I mean, not throwing at Okra, but Okra made US 30 a broadband-ready corridor, and that adds 6 months to permitting. So I don't know what happens behind the scenes. I've called Scott Rudd and said, give us a hand with that. So literally half of the town of Wanata is stranded because it's a broadband-ready corridor we can't cross. So I don't know what it looks like on your side, but I'm just saying if you want broadband, find ways to embrace it and get real about it.
He hit some hurdles there, like the railroad and stuff like that. And we waited 2 years just to get underneath the railroad.
What?
2 years to get underneath the railroad. And these are definitely big hurdles. I know you ran through them real quick, but they're key things that we live with every day, even Gene, of trying to get stuff built. And have to walk away from areas and jump other areas just because of that. So trying to get all these together, I've worked with Scott Rudd for many, many years, even before he was a broadband guy, and he understands that's why he's in the position he's in, that trying to get the state to let up a little bit. The broadband corridor they did made things worse. It didn't help things. It made things worse by having these corridors. And the cost of things went astronomical over it. What is it, $1 a foot or something like that to be able to access that corridor, which adds the cost to the product and everything else in the bill. So 100%, try to get everything together, but the state is a tough one to try to get these guys. The railroads are gods, and they seem to have to bypass everybody, and they run the world.
I know that well.
Yeah, they used to be the broadband 150 years ago.
Yes, they were. But something you want to really think of this is no different than the infrastructure that we built many, many years ago, electric, telephone, to get it out to these areas. We're doing the same thing again. And we're trying to reinvent the wheel, but, we got to get it out there. It's a necessity for life.
Yeah, you're right. I couldn't agree more. Eric mentioned railroads. They are the bane of our existence. $50,000 in permitting costs and engineering cost to cross a railroad in Porter County, and it was 150 feet more to get from one end to the other. That's all. I only had to go 150 feet.
Wow.
2 years and $50,000, and I had to get Senator Braun's office involved to hound Amtrak, is who it was, to get the paperwork off of one guy's desk to get it signed and get it moved on. That's what we had to do. We had to bring the politicians in order to get it done. I commend those communities in Porter County and elsewhere that have streamlined the process. We have communities that work with us that don't charge us for permits. We have to go through the permitting process, but they don't charge us. They want broadband in their community. And so they're like, hey, here's the process, we'll streamline it, it's administrative, don't worry about having, it doesn't have to go to a planning board, doesn't have to go before any commissions. If staff says this looks good, it happens. That's the only way we're going to get broadband out there more quickly. And so I commend the county for working on this process to streamline it, because that's important. And I commend the county for what they did. They created a broadband ordinance a year ago, and we worked with Bob and Scott on that, and that helped a lot. So, there's a lot that Porter County's already done, but there's still more you can do, and we would encourage you Gene's building fiber and Couch, so are we. We work with these communities to get the small towns and townships and get their approvals, and also work with the county. But our biggest issue in the past has been this new broadband corridor that the state came up with. It basically stopped building in a lot of areas. And US 30 is a broadband corridor. That's what he's got a problem with in Wanata. So if you're south or north of US 30 and you want to cross it, it's a process. And it just extended the amount of time necessary to be able to get infrastructure built. So, you know, we're always letting the state know that they need to fix this. And it's kind of funny, on one side, you got the state willing to put $250 million out for broadband and hand it to ISPs to provide service in unserved areas. And on the other hand, you have a state agency that's sitting there going, well, if you want to cross that road, it's $50,000.
So is that NDOT?
That's NDOT. And if you go to the NDOT, if you just search Broadband Corridor, Indiana, and there's a map that shows you all of the broadband corridors around the state. And if you're in an urban area where there's a broadband corridor like 8094 or 65, and you want to actually access that right away to put broadband in, it's $2,500 a mile every year. It's not a one-time permit. It's annual. So if you have 10 miles of fiber that you built along a broadband corridor, it's $25,000 a year that you have to pay the state to be in that right-of-way. It's ridiculous. Immediately, the ROI on that build just went out the window. Guess what? We're not going to build it. So it's those kinds of, you know, problems that we encounter in order to try to get our infrastructure built. And, you know, in some ways, you have state departments that really want to help, and others just don't really care. They're like, hey, follow the process. So we're doing the best we can. We're building it as quickly as we can, but we need density, and if we have to go into rural areas to serve people like we really want to do, we're going to need some assistance to do that.
Thanks, Tom. The final incentive that Indiana has available to local governments is what's called a infrastructure development zone. Daviess County has some success, they say, in that. I don't know enough about it. I have reached out to their economic development director and to OCRA to learn more about it. But essentially what it says, along the lines of what was mentioned earlier, treat an ISP provider like you would an industrial prospect. And when an industrial prospect comes to town, often a community will say, we'll give you tax abatement for the first 10 years if you promise to invest so many dollars or create so many jobs. Infrastructure, broadband, fiber is subject to a personal property tax in Indiana. I'm not exactly sure how it's rated or how it's levied, but communities like Daviess County have said, if you promise to bring fiber at this rate of speed and invest so many $1 million over the next blank years, we'll phase in or abate the personal property taxes on your investment. And essentially what they're saying is, we'll defer the taxes on that. Everything eventually gets taxed, but for the first 5 or 10 years or whatever, if they meet certain perspectives, then the county commissioners, in this case, it doesn't go to the county council as I understand it, could pass a tax abatement type, what they call infrastructure zone. Are you familiar with success in that?
I've heard about it, but I'm not very familiar. I'll learn more in the next week.
Okay.
Can I speak on, and you don't lose that, I want to be clear, you don't lose that because I think Purdue did a study of 4 or 5% of home values go up because having fiber, which you may have not got it here for the infrastructure, but you gained it because there's fiber in that community. The value of that home has went up 4 to 5%.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so those counteract each other, so it's worth incentivizing that build.
So, Madam Chair, I would recommend that the committee consider, for now at least, the Broadband Ready Ordinance, proposing that to our county commissioners. Some sort of a marketing program to encourage our stakeholders to sign up for the state program. I'm not sure I know enough, I'm sure I don't know enough about the infrastructure development zone to recommend that at this time. But I will study it if you want me to.
Yes, I read the ordinance that you sent me, and it's very interesting. I think it could have some potential positives for us. Does everybody want to take a minute to look at this ordinance that we can recommend to the commissioners? And tell me what your thoughts are. And you said there's not much room to wiggle on this, right?
No, the code is pretty clear. In order to be considered a broadband, you must pass an ordinance that has these elements. And Scott has, I think, done an initial review of this, and Bob might want to talk about it from an administrative standpoint. I know he's had some thoughts about it.
So, can I ask, you made mention about the county already having a broadband ordinance. Is that different than what we're looking at?
It's dealing with fees.
Yeah.
We did our fee schedule and trying to help them out in that sense. If they prove it was broadband and we put in certain areas that were considered rural versus urban on that, and they proved to us that they had the 25/3 speeds, then we had a reduced cost for the permit.
And this is pretty specific to making us broadband ready.
It's not anything really like what the state is recommending.
Thanks for the clarification.
And passing something like this isn't going to make it more difficult, right?
I haven't seen it yet.
Ah.
Oh.
Let me take a copy.
Here, pass one down there to Jean, too.
Yeah.
And this does eliminate the fee, right?
It eliminates the fee.
Thought you might like that one.
It also states that there's going to be no permit, but you do have to get us the plans in. And we have 10 days to review the plans and then tell you, give you comments back on that. That's part of it. And then it's, the other major item on that too is that no discrimination between carriers or other utilities and stuff like that.
Good. I'd like to run this by our project manager who handles all of our permitting. He is my expert, and I'll just give this to him today. Is it okay if we give you comment on it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And whatever we do today, it'll still come in front of the commissioners and take comments at that point.
Very good. Thank you very much.
I will say that as a practical matter, sometimes towns and counties have experienced shoddy workmanship. Cables are being fastened to a cement bridge or a steel bridge without then being sealed and rust-proofed, and sometimes they're using contractors from out of town or out of state who are trying to maximize their profit by kind of cutting corners short. And Bob was asking me about this, and the fact that you don't get a permit or you don't have to pay a fee doesn't relieve you of the responsibility from taking care of public structures and making sure that the caulk is put in place after the holes are drilled and the like, and there will be some inspection of that work. Is that right?
Correct.
And the bond is still in place?
That's one of the things we're going to be probably looking at on that, and I don't know, we've been kicking a number of things down the road about that and how we totally revise that. But I mean, one of the things we are looking at is redoing our construction specifications because of the no discrimination part, everything like that, so that way it's clearly outlined to all utilities on what is expected. And number one, we really don't like things attached to our bridges, but we get it at times. It's difficult when we have to tear that bridge down, and trying to get people out there working with us. So that's one of the main reasons. But then also underneath regulated drains, we're just going to very simply keep it, stay 5 feet below our flow line.
Would we still have to come before the drainage board?
No, it's administrative review. Our engineer will probably bring it in front of the drainage board after it's been already done, just as far as a notification type thing.
Okay.
This is what I did. I approved this.
That's with the railroads, they're gonna be a hurdle, the bridges will be a hurdle. We understand not fastening the bridge and structurals and stuff like that. That's something you wanna look at and figure out how to be able to accomplish that without burdening everybody getting it done too. Coming up with a plan and a system on it, but yes, you should not, just because you're giving it free or trying to get everybody to do it, don't just slap it out there and go. I mean, I agree 100% on that. It's still in here,
So do we want to vote on this today for a recommendation to the commissioners? or do you all feel ready for that, or do you want more time to look at it?
Is it possible to make a recommendation to, for the commissioners to look at a guidance for the broadband, but not put specifically this? That would give other people to take a look at it, and just our recommendation would be for the commissioners to approve an ordinance, correct?
Understood, I think.
Does that make sense?
I think, I understand the point. I mean, it seems like there's still some questions on your end. I think it sounds like it's going against the existing ordinance. I mean, peeling back the fee.
Oh, well, yeah. It will supersede a few things
Yeah,
from our
I
other
mean,
ordinance.
Certainly, we want to keep moving forward, so I think, I would say, let's recommend this to the commissioners. Looks like some stakeholders want to review it a little bit.
And they'll get their chance.
Yeah.
I mean, we won't pass it with no
So,
comment.
I don't think there's any,
Scott, would there be a public hearing for this, since it's an ordinance?
There would be, and I also I'm not sure there's a whole lot of editing available to us on that broadband.
In order to be ready, broadband ready.
So, there might not be, and I think everyone should review it and understand it. Our hands are fairly tied as to what was required. That's why yesterday, at the stormwater meeting, we passed a resolution to speed up the review for the drainage board, which is not need. And so we're in play, but we have a couple weeks before the next commissioners meeting, and it will be first reading. So if there is something to change, we can change it before that.
Well, I'd like to see us vote, it's obviously up to all of you, but I'd like to see us vote to recommend this to the commissioners, since there is very little wiggle room for us, as far as editing it, and there is public hearing at that meeting before we would pass it. So I think anything that needs to be changed or people are unhappy with, there will be a chance to address it after first reading.
Yeah, with that in mind, Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the Broadband Task Force passes a recommendation on to the commissioners for the broadband ready community as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
I'm sorry, but I've got to head back to Indy.
Thank you so much. Yeah, your information was terrific.
Roberto, could we have your cell phone number so we can call you with questions as you drive down to Indy?
Let me think about that. Patty knows how to get a hold of me.
All right. I'm kind of being teasing, but, and if you would be willing to share your slideshow,
Of course.
then I can forward it on to Doug Ross over at the media and Troy, who's not here.
I would totally encourage for you to approve a aggressive marketing plan, so residents can go through the portal and register their address.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we're to the roundtable discussion. I think that's probably a good place to start. How do we do this aggressive marketing?
Well, I'd start by asking our library director what his thoughts are.
Yeah, so I was taking notes about the economic component of it, getting the word out to people, and that's where our wheelhouse is. So I think that somebody mentioned that having it on the internet is where we all default to, does us no good in this case.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think in the libraries is an excellent place to be.
And that's where a lot of people who don't have access come, right?
Exactly, which we had, just this year so far, we've had nearly 7,000 unique people using it, the actual terminals themselves.
Wow.
And we're talking, nearly 100,000 hours put in for these individuals, so they're there frequently. We would have signs posted at every one of our computer terminals. I would say that bag stuffing of flyers, really going kind of the old school route, would make a lot of sense. Actually getting it to those folks, and then the school districts partnering with them for sending it home in their
backpacks as well.
Could there be a pop-up screen when you first log on at the
There will
library?
be a pop-up screen, we'd also have it at, we have digital TV screens behind every circulation desk, so you don't actually have to use the computer. And I could even put it as a portal pop-up
Yeah,
screen
that's
for
what
Wi-Fi access for people who might be sitting out in the car and not knowing that they
Oh.
have it.
Perfect.
Jesse, could your graphics people prepare a template that the schools could then use?
Just gonna ask, because the other part, not just that, but if we wanna get that broadband, something that I get asked frequently is, what are even the providers that are out there? Because when they buy a new house and they're coming into there, because that's the first thing that people talk about when you come in is, oh, you're not gonna get internet out here. But they don't even know who the providers are that would have the potential broadband. And there's some sites that you can go online, but I'll tell you, they're not accurate. Because they'll tell you that they offer services at your house, and they don't necessarily do that. And I can speak from personal experience, because it took me 4 months just to get internet at my house. In my job, I have to have internet.
Well, I think sometimes they cover the area, but there's trees in the way, or, I mean, there's, you know,
I would like to have that access too.
I think,
Before I found one that would work.
could you also get that to me, because I can contact the other superintendents down
Yeah,
there in
yeah.
South County.
Yeah, and I can work with them to help with that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Patty, your office has resources with all the 4-H clubs and
Oh, yeah.
perhaps we could work with your extension office to get that flyer
That's a
or
good
whatever,
idea.
market it out to families in the 4-H clubs and the other rural community areas.
And again, most of our communication is via computer, but,
Yeah, I think,
but contacting all the volunteers, and when they meet in local clubs, they can get the word out, that kind of thing too, so, yeah.
We could even designate a terminal at each of the branches to assist with the process, because a lot of the folks don't have the skills because they've never had the access, and so they have difficulty even going through that process.
and there is an 800 number, there's a call center. I'm not sure how
Right.
staffed it is and the like, but
I mean, it just really seems like, as we're talking, the gap that exists between people who have easy internet access and those who don't, it's just widening by the week, almost.
Yeah.
So, it'll be really good to get this ball rolling.
Another potential resource would be the township trustees' offices.
Oh, that's a
Good
great
point.
one,
Mm.
yeah,
Good
yeah,
point.
super. That's a really good one. And it won't hurt to get it on our websites. It helps information spread, people talk.
I was thinking that, do you know people who? You know, help them out, give them this number,
Right,
give them this flyer.
Right.
yeah, that's where it would be beneficial at my office, because we get calls all the time saying, they're just down the road. Can't you tell them to bring the fiber down to us too?
Yeah.
No, I can't.
Well, when they can't get it, they call everyone, 'cause,
Yeah,
I
we've
think
had the chamber reach out to us because people have called asking for them, where can they get it? So they get redirected to us
Right.
frequently. So we can do outreach to all those organizations.
I think sometimes people that are moving to the more rural areas too are coming from the city environment, and it doesn't even occur to them that they might have problems
Yeah.
getting internet till
Maybe
it's
it's
too late.
It's like not
Maybe
having
people
water.
don't move to certain areas as well.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of, they won't come to that community, that subdivision, whatever, because it doesn't.
Because it has
That's why my
that
children
stuff.
left home.
I mean, we're only 60 miles from Chicago. We should have good access all over the county.
Can I ask you guys a question? Right now, the definition is 25.3, correct, for broadband? And then I heard during the presentations where the infrastructure bill or the federal government may up this to 125. Is your infrastructure that you're putting in now for 25.3 going to be able to capable of doing the 125?
Our, it's probably just similar to Is Broadband, we're a 100 gigabit network.
Okay.
And we currently can provide with fiber, a gigabit to the home, and that is symmetrical speeds, 1,000 up, 1,000 down. But we are about to move into the next 2.0 of that, where we'll get to 2 gig capable homes, just by changing out electronics that we have in the field.
Okay.
And it depends, just upgrading one specific box, which might handle a couple of hundred customers, it's about a $10,000 to $15,000 upgrade for that box to get it from a 1 gig capable to the home to a 2 gig capable to the home. But then, that equipment's going to continuously get cheaper for us. And it won't be long before we're offering 5 gig and 10 gig to the home. Even cable, announced the other day that they're at a DOCSIS 4.0 for their modems, and it's in the lab right now, where they're testing for cable companies that probably in the next 5 years, maybe 10 years, they'll be doing 10 gig to the home via cable. So it's all in process. Speeds are going to continuously grow, but our networks, fiber networks that are all fiber, are infinitely capable of delivering speeds.
What about fixed wireless? What is that?
Fixed wireless, Gene's really the best at fixed wireless over here.
Pro on that, been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that that's probably been the shortcoming of the state and the federal programs to this point, is that they have kept the bar pretty low at 25.3, which we can easily do with fixed wireless. But when you get above 100 megabits, that's where it becomes a challenge. And so that's kind of where they're setting that bar at that level. We just made an investment in a spectrum called CBRS. It's a program the federal government put out to auction. And we won about $5 million of spectrum across the Midwest to allow us to do 100 by 25 in certain areas. I think Porter County is one of the ones that we won. And we'll be upgrading our infrastructure. But that's really, this is my opinion, but that's really just a Band-Aid. Like, that is not going to get us to where we all want to be, which is symmetrical broadband. I think gigabits, somebody said it earlier, but symmetrical gigabit, meaning upload and download, is where the bar should be. Now, it's going to be expensive to get it to the rural parts. Like, we're doing a project right now kind of next to each other in Newton County, where I guarantee there's not 3 houses per mile on some of these roads.
One.
Yeah.
And
you know,
2 buffalo.
It costs us, in rural areas, we can put fiber in the ground for maybe $6, $7 a foot. So, it's costing us $10,000 or $15,000 per home to get fiber, and our ROI, I'm gonna let you in our playbook, guys. Our ROI is if we can get the cost per home to $1,250 or less, $1,250, we get an ROI in 7 to 10 years. Wow. So we're talking about 10 times more than that, or more than that, to get some of these rural folks.
But if they got a $25,000 grant from the state, then your ROI,
that's right.
much more attractive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But into your question, the infrastructure of fiber in the ground is going to be the best solution that we have.
Okay.
Because like tried to cheap, you just change the 2 ends, all the middle stays the same. Coaxial has a problem with that, DSL has a problem with that. So fiber is the main one. Wireless, he's right, but there's caps. You keep hitting these caps. It's just okay, we're not here now, let's jump here, let's jump here. I was just talking to the doctor just a second ago, and as we move up to 100 by 100 and all this, and we start moving that up, it hurts the purpose of what we're talking about is the unserved people. Because as you move that up, that means we go back to the dense areas again
The gap just
and
keeps
build
getting
them up.
bigger.
We still leave the others outside. And I was trying to tell them if we could figure out a way for the schools and for you guys are the ones who know they're unserved, or underserved, not the state of Indiana. That map was never designed for what it's used for. I was around when they were designing the map. It wasn't meant for that.
And we don't even know.
And it won't serve what you need. That's where you need. Just keep bumping up that number is not going to solve the problem. That's going to make it worse. If they start doing 100 by 100, Gene and I are going to go right back to the dense areas because that's where you'll go, leaving those guys even farther out behind. Using your input, your marketing strategies as well, trying to find these areas. The schools know best who are not served and who not. They can get that information from the kids, the students. And then going out and say, guys, here's the areas I got. These are not served or very underserved. Help me get these done. What can we do? And then making a plan around that. We just start using numbers and bumping those numbers up, we'll defeat everything that we want to do, 100%. And Dr. agrees with me on that. But trying to get that done from the state was tough, he said. They shot down most of the ideas they had on that. But you guys can do it.
Stu, can I get a copy of that article?
Yes, yes. I'll email it out.
That'd be great.
One question, if you wanted to reach out to the doctor about, that I had, I mean, you kept on hearing about P3s, public-private. Are there any good models out there in the state, or any place in there where there were actually very successful P3s completed?
And kind of along with that, are there any other counties like us that don't really qualify for a lot of things, even though we definitely have a problem?
And I can follow up with him to see if there's he goes all over the state and has worked with a lot of different counties. And I thought that one article had some examples in it too. That's what, all these case studies.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're counties in Indiana. No, these are all counties in Indiana. So this one that was sent out, the Steps to Success. I was just trying to glancing through those, see if any of them were P3s, but I can specifically make that ask.
Sorry.
I just heard
That's a good question. Does anybody else have anything to add right now? Questions? What about meeting again? What do you think?
It'd be the shortest task force in the county's history if you chose to say, we're done.
I think it's always good to communicate. I think passing the ordinance was key to this board, but I'd like to follow up on how we're doing with marketing, what's changing with what you guys are doing, and I really want to solve this problem. I'd like to meet again.
If we were to meet in about 4 to 6 weeks, I could even come back with some numbers that give an idea of what we've got in our rural schools.
That'd be fantastic.
Some addresses and
His school
stuff like that.
corporation has 3 schools, so that's
First week of December.
good. 3-school system.
And I can also reach out to my colleagues in Porter Township and MSD Boone and see if we can get some, because it's at least my understanding, most of our challenges are in the south part of the county.
Yeah.
There's some issues up at the north in spots, but even looking at the map that was shared with us today, it's primarily South County. That's where the population density schools.
Yeah, yeah.
I can tell you at Marshall County, one thing that was super helpful, we partnered with NICO's, sort of, like, in Marshall County, Rochester Telephone is the local telephone company. So we got together with the schools, they shared a list of all the providers of all the underserved students who suffered during the pandemic from lack of broadband, and then collectively, we just solved it. And so, because you know that, we don't. So that would be something that we would like, is just tell us where you have a need, and then we'll work together to figure it out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You guys can get the information that we need to find these unserved areas.
And once again, the question that we're going to have to define, and we'll have, and that's why I want to take a look at that article, and I'll use the definition of broadband of 25.3. A lot of our families have internet, but it's not appropriate. We're, like Troy was saying, 10 tops.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that I'm fortunate enough that I found a provider that can give me 100 at the house. But even yesterday afternoon, I got back from a board meeting and I had my daughter, my son-in-law, and my wife trying to do schoolwork because they all 3 teach. And we just put a new Wi-Fi system in the house, and they told me, yeah, Dad, we're still struggling. I'm hoping it was because of the rain.
Mine used to go out when the train went by.
Really?
That was fun. Yeah.
And then cost comes in that. Sometimes they say they don't have service, but it is there, but the cost is,
They can afford it.
Well, that's,
doesn't
Right.
justify it.
Right.
And, you
so
know,
for us, when I look at the statistics, Portage is the one that has the biggest issues and needs access because of the affordability component. That one statistically has more usage than my other branches combined on their computer lab often.
And so they're the ones that are struggling, they're the ones that have the most students coming in and using it because they can't afford it at home, even though they may have access.
We both are set up in the emergency broadband program, which allows us $50 per month federal subsidy for certain people that qualify for income level. So in our case, we charge our entry-level fiber packages, I think $50. So the customer gets free fiber internet if they meet these income criteria. I'm not sure how well that's communicated with the public, and I'm not sure how low or high the threshold is. I'm not sure how many people actually qualify.
So with that being said, I will tell you, as a school, and I'm just speaking for the other superintendents, it would be awesome to have that kind of information that we can share with our people. Yeah. And that's something that if we could establish something, and I know you're working on an infographic that could talk a little bit about making that phone call for the service or the $25,000 to help. But if we had the list of the providers, that emergency broadband kind of stuff that we could give to our parents, because something that we're looking at, we need infrastructure, but the other thing, we need to educate our public so that they know how to get it. And if we can help that, because we've got parents that come in and we can have a flyer or something right there that they can pick up and go, it would be significantly helpful, because as an educator, more and more of what we're doing is digital.
And if I can target it based on the information to the different groups, so in Portage, it may not be that $25,000 grant, but if it is that sort of subsidy, we can direct, target, and market to the individuals who need it based off the location. I'm spread out throughout the county so we can hit different pockets.
You're going to find that as we continue to build out fiber infrastructure into residential communities and in rural areas, the cost of that service per meg is going to keep coming down. I mean, between Gene and I, and between NITCO and Is Broadband, we're, for 100 meg symmetrical service over fiber, it's around $60 a month. And you're going to find that as those speeds continue to increase, we improve our infrastructure, we may still be at $60 a month, but you might be getting a gig for that. So, speeds will increase, the dollar figure is going to stay about the same, maybe drop a little bit, but your cost per meg is going to come way down.
Before you guys leave, would you give your emails to Jesse so he can contact you about the emergency broadband program and the like, and thank you for offering to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, 6 weeks from now is, if I'm counting this right, the day before Thanksgiving, which I think is probably not the best day to meet. So either 5 weeks or 7 weeks. What kind of dates work for your schedules? 7?
For that first week in December?
How about December 1st?
Sorry, I am in a hearing
All right.
week. I apologize.
That's all right. December 8th?
Good.
Everybody else? Can you make it, Aaron?
I will be in Indianapolis, but
I think your input's important.
What about earlier in November, or is that too soon, like the 17th?
The 17th? That's okay with me.
I have another hearing.
I'll be in Fort Wayne.
All right.
Busy people.
How do you all feel about a Friday morning?
When are you back from Indianapolis, Aaron?
I'll be back on that next day.
Oh, so maybe December 9th
Yeah,
or
it's
something?
only a one-day meeting.
Okay. December 9th works for me. Is this time good, or would you rather do later?
I'm Eastern too, so me and Gina.
Oh, okay. So it kind of works for you guys.
I'll miss yours.
Just might go 8:30, the building will be open.
Yeah, 8:30 would be better.
8:30 on Thursday, December 9th?
All right, 8:30 Thursday, December 9th. All right. Thank you all so much for coming.